Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures, Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Sunny Vanderstar. Today's topic is Meet the Elephants of Sri Lanka, and it will be presented by our fabulous NatHab expedition leaders, Payal and Ramani. Ladies, thank you so much for being here today and for taking us with you to Sri Lanka for the next hour. Let's go ahead and dive in.
Thank you, Sunny, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We are so excited to be presenting on this topic. Elephants, right? A very, very well-known animal, and I'm sure even a little 10-year-old child up in Greenland will know what an elephant is. And not just is it a very well-known, a popular animal in that sense, but also quite well studied and much discussed. But we feel there's always something more and new to learn about, right? Even about these animals that we kind of know quite well. So today's presentation is going to be a mix of some fundamental information about elephants, but also some really special stories of elephants that live in Sri Lanka. And before we dive into the topic, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Payal and I live in India, and I've been guiding for NatHab since 2014. I guide in Nepal, Bhutan, India, Sri Lanka, and Borneo. And with me presenting today is Ramani. Ramani?
Hello, I'm Ramani. I'm from Sri Lanka. I've been guiding for NatHab since 2018, and I guide in Switzerland, Sri Lanka, and in Borneo. And since the two of us have been guiding in countries that elephants are present, we decided to share our love for elephants and speak to you about the things we've learned about them.
Exactly. And this presentation especially, we cannot move on without introducing to you one more person who has really helped with the content of everything that we are going to speak about. And this for you, ladies and gentlemen, is Dr. Sumit Pilapitia, who is an environmental scientist and an elephant ethologist from Sri Lanka. Actually, Ramani has had many opportunities to actually interact with him and learn from him, even in the field, out in Sri Lankan jungles. So with that, let's dive into our topic. Ramani is going to switch her webcam off because she's a little worried about her internet connectivity. Yeah, but you'll be able to hear her. So yeah, let's dive in. So we always speak about elephants, and many of you may know that elephants at the present moment, in this time in the history of the earth, are found on two continents, right? Asia and Africa. So you have Asian elephants and African elephants. We usually just talk of elephants, just when casually talking about them. But these two elephants are actually quite different. As you can see in the photographs here, in the illustration here, their common ancestor, they split from their common ancestor about 25 to 30 million years ago. So it's been a while since they've been separated, and hence they are now quite different. They belong even to separate genus, right? So let me show you some physical differences that are easy to tell. One, of course, is that the African elephant is a much larger animal compared to the Asian. Look at the smaller differences. The Asian elephant, look at the skull, the crown. I hope all of you can see my cursor here. The crown of the elephant has a dent, right, for the Asian one, whereas the African elephant has a smooth skull, smooth crown. And look at the ears. The Asian elephant has much smaller ears compared to the size of the head, whereas the African elephant has very, very large ears compared to its body size and the face. Coming down on their body, you look at the tusks. The African elephants, the male as well as females, have tusks, large tusks, whereas in Asian elephants, females don't have tusks or have very tiny tusks, barely visible, whereas it's the males in the Asian elephants who have long tusks. Furthermore, you look at the trunk, right at the end of the trunk, the Asian elephant has one finger-like projection, yeah, right at the edge of the trunk. Whereas for the African elephant, there are two finger-like projections. This difference, the theory is that it is mainly due to the difference in diet, the kind of stuff that they have to hold and pull. So Asian elephants, for example, are mainly grazers, grass eaters, whereas Africans are browsers and frugivores. So for them, it's more useful to have two fingers at the end of the trunk here. There are more differences, like the number of toes in each leg, and also, and also the shape of the back. So Asian elephants, it's not very visible here in this illustration, but Asian elephants have a convex back, whereas African elephants have almost a flat or even a concave saddle-like back. So these are the main differences physically, yeah. But they also occupy different habitats. Now, in fact, very recently, the African elephant has been split into two different species. The forest-dwelling African elephant is different, and the savanna, open area dwelling African elephant is different. Anyway, so that's just the basic difference between the Asian and the African elephants. Today, of course, our main focus is the Asian elephant, and especially those that live in Sri Lanka. Let's see what the distribution is like. So again, I hope you all can see my cursor. In this blue world map, you see this red box. That's in general where the Asian elephants have lived and live now. And in the larger map here, you see the yellow paint. The entire yellow shaded area was the historical distribution of the Asiatic elephant. Today, however, the Asian elephants are found only where you have these green spots. So they are in many countries in South and Southeast Asia, but their ranges, their populations have really reduced to these scattered populations all over this region. Especially on our NatHab trips, there are actually multiple trips, Asia trips, where you are likely to see or you have a chance of seeing an elephant. So India, for example, here it's not very well marked, but in central India on the Grand India trip, you have one of the parks where you have a chance of seeing the elephant, Bandhavgarh. And the reason why this is not marked here, because these elephants have come back to this park after almost 100 years. They had totally become extinct from this area in central India 100 years ago. And now they are back. Just pre-COVID, these elephants have come back and they've almost kind of settled. First, we were thinking they might be just passage and they'll move on, but they're actually staying, which is amazing news, very, very exciting. Of course, then you have Nepal and Bhutan. In Nepal, we visit Chitwan National Park, where you have a chance of seeing elephants. In Nepal, in Chitwan especially, the elephants are not resident, they are visiting elephants. So if you are at the same time when the elephants are visiting, we have a chance, a good chance of seeing them. And besides that, let's come down to Borneo. Borneo has another subspecies of the Asian elephants, which we often call them the pygmy elephants. And they have a very small pocket population, but this is the part of Borneo we spend a lot of time in on our trip, on our NatHab trip to Borneo. Of course, last but not the least, and the most important destination for today's presentation, Sri Lanka. So here's Sri Lanka for you, ladies and gentlemen, and Sri Lanka has Asian elephants also, and it's almost a miracle that such a tiny island has a thriving, productive population of elephants. And not only does Sri Lanka have elephants in such a small island to have such a large mammal, but even more surprising is that of all the countries where elephants exist today, the highest density of elephants are in Sri Lanka, which is very, very amazing. India has the highest number, but that's a large landmass. Sri Lanka has the highest density. So it's very, very fascinating, yeah? Now, let's like I said, all of us know elephants from many years. We know them. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen them. Maybe all of you out there in the audience. But let's go through some of the most well-known facts, okay, about elephants. So yeah, we all know that they are the largest land mammal. They have the longest nose in the world, huge tusks, which make them look so magnificent, right? This creature, of course, it is also a feature that often puts them into trouble because of poaching. But yeah, huge tusks. They are one of the few animals on our planet who recognize themselves in the mirror, right? Which is also a reflection of their intelligence and the power of cognition, right? So there are few mammals on Earth, primates, dolphins, and elephants, who have a large frontal cortex, which gives them an extra power to, high level of cognition and intelligence, to have the ability of recognition, to have the ability of solving problems, use of tools, right? So the elephant is a highly intelligent animal. And along with it, of course, memory. They are very, very famous for it. They remember individual elephants, even people, landscapes, habitats, seasons, sources of water for many, many years. They can remember that information. Besides just intelligence and power of cognition, they also have a very high emotional quotient in, amongst the animal world. I'm sure many of you have heard that there have been many observations of elephants actually mourning, for example, the death of someone in their family or in their herd. What else do we know? They are a long-lived social animal, right? About 70 years average lifespan, that's almost equal to ours. For their size, they are extremely fast and agile. They may look huge, and how are they going to pass through a dense forest? But they do that pretty well. With these large ears, they can also hear fantastically well, long distances, but they can also hear infrasonic wavelength. That's a wavelength below ours, which we are totally incapable of hearing, but elephants hear it very well. And lower the wavelength, the farther that sound travels. So they're able to hear very long distances too. What else? They can also smell from very great distances. Of course, this large nose is quite an evidence of that, but also there have been many experiments and observations of this ability. They eat a lot, of course, almost on an average 100 kilos of food every day. And that's actually just an average. A full-grown bull can eat almost twice the amount of this food in a day. What else do we know? We also know that while they are gentle giants, they can also sometimes be aggressive and destructive, especially males in musk. I'm sure many of you here know what males in musk, what I mean by musk. Musk is basically a phase in the life, in almost annually, which a male elephant goes through, where there is a spike in testosterone. It's a hormonal spike, which is when they are in heat and ready to mate, and that's the time when they defend females, look for females in heat, and try to mate. Yeah. What else do we know? Of course, very highly well known, the social behavior of elephants, the fact that they live in herds. They are led by a wise, old, experienced matriarch almost always. They share very strong social bonds, right? Also, again, it is connected to the emotional quotient that we spoke about earlier. They also have the lovely culture of teaching and passing on knowledge, to other members of the herd or to the younger members of the herd. And what else do we know? We know that bulls are mostly seen alone. We often know that bulls are lone bulls, and they kind of live an asocial life once they become sexually mature, right? However, recent study shows that we are not quite true in our thinking about bulls and as being so asocial or such loners. And we are going to handle that topic in our presentation as we go along. So I'll leave it for when we come there. Yeah. So why don't we start our presentation and our peek into Sri Lanka with this very topic. Why don't we start with social behavior and the females. And to talk about Sri Lanka, we are going to first look at Yala National Park. We are going to take you to this park during this presentation. It is one of the larger parks. It is right here in the southeastern corner of Sri Lanka. And Ramani actually has had a long-standing relationship with this park. Ramani, why don't you tell us a little bit about Yala?
Yes, Yala is the second largest park in Sri Lanka. It is about 500 square miles in size, and it was designated a wildlife sanctuary in the 1900s. And in 1938, it was declared a national park. Vegetation is characterized by dry monsoon forest, thorny scrub, and savanna grassland. I've been visiting this park since I've been a kid. I've noticed a change in the number of elephants. Initially, we used to see very large herds of elephants, and when we would go in our jeep, sometimes we would be surrounded by a herd of about 30, 35 elephants. Today, however, the herds are much smaller, and there are 7 small herds consisting of about 5 to 7 elephants. And these are the elephants we see. And the reason why we see such small herds is probably because of the way we manage the park, the laissez-faire management, in the sense that we allow succession to take place. That means we allow the grasslands to go into scrub and then into the forest. And this reduces the amount of food that the elephants have to eat. And this might be a reason for the population to be much less and the herds to be much smaller. This herd we see here is called Gamunu's herd. This is one of the most habituated of the herds, and it is most likely that we will see Gamunu's herd on our trip into Yala. The other herds are quite skittish, and if they do see a vehicle, they will quickly dash into the forest. And it's quite amazing, like Payal said, although they are such large animals, they are so agile and they're able to get into the forest without you even seeing a leaf or anything move. They're so quick and can disappear so well. Here we have what we call the gathering, the Great Elephant Gathering. And this happens in a place called Min area, which is on the northeast of Sri Lanka. And here the elephants gather. It was a great ancient civilization here, and there's a whole system of cascading tanks, or what we call reservoirs or irrigation tanks. And when they release the water for rice cultivation, these tanks are, by the way, about 1,500 years old and are still in use. And when they release the water to the rice fields, the banks get free of water and the lovely grass grows. And that's what these animals come to feed in the month of August, because the rest of the country faces a severe drought and there's not much food for these elephants to feed on. About 70 to 90%, they say, of our elephants are outside of the national park and they roam in the forested areas. But now and then they do go into people's crops, like you can see here. This is a temporary shed that a villager has put on to carry out what we call slash and burn agriculture, where they burn the forest and then they grow crops like sesame, pumpkin, and other type of goats. And here you can see 2 male elephants coming and digging out the yams that have been planted here. So, matriarch. In an African herd, you do have the oldest female that acts as the matriarch. However, in the Asian elephants or here in Sri Lanka, there doesn't seem to be a specific elephant that's a matriarch. There seem to be, the decisions seem to be taken by different females depending on the, whatever the problem is. You'll have a different elephant. Sometimes it might not be the oldest, it might be a younger one, will take the lead role and make the decision. And the reason why we may not have a matriarch like in the African herds might be because these elephants, the African elephants, have to travel long distances to find food and water because they have very long drought periods, and also because of the predators and poachers. Whereas here in Sri Lanka, we don't really have any predators, only the human being with which the elephants have a conflict, but otherwise in a national park, they don't have predators. And we don't have such long droughts, so there is adequate food and water, and maybe that's the reason why we don't have a matriarch. Elephants, as you can see, and you may have already seen elephants in Africa and Asia, they're very protective of their young. They always will surround their calves when they're crossing the road, or if there's any danger, even if there's a safari vehicle that comes close to these elephants, they will make sure that they put the little ones between the older elephants and protect them. And here we see that even when a baby decides to sleep by the side of the road, the mother will just stand by the baby, and sometimes an aunt might join the mother, and they will keep watch over the baby and wait till the baby wakes up. Unlike us human mothers, we might be saying, come on, get up, it's time to go. They never rush their babies. They just let them sleep, and then they will catch up with the rest of the herd.
Oh my God, Ramani, this is so sweet. It's actually very fascinating for me to hear that, that in Sri Lankan herds, they have seen that it's not necessary for them to have a matriarch who's always, the permanent leader of the herd. And this story also about the sleeping baby elephant right here and waiting for it to wake up and then catch up with the rest of the herds. That's extremely sweet. Thank you, Ramani, for sharing that about Sri Lankan elephants with us. With that, everyone, let's now look at the males that we mentioned earlier in the presentation, where we said that we often look at male elephants as, especially the sexually matured ones, we think of them as loners, asocial. Their only contribution to the elephant society seems to be their sperm when they mate with females in heat. But actually, that is quite an incorrect perception of males. Yes, there are times in their lives when they might be solitary, and when they are in must, they are actually an animal that everyone is wary of. But they do have a very interesting role to play in elephant society. And a very interesting study about that was done in Africa. I think it was Botswana, if I'm not wrong, where they studied male elephants, because all the focus up till then, most of the study has been on matriarchs and the females and the role of the female in protecting the herd and so on. That is very, very important. But because of that, culling or hunting of big bulls was made legal in some countries in Africa. And there was a study done to show that actually big bulls, mature bulls, have a very, very important role to play in society. They often take young, freshly sexually matured males who leave their, maternal herd. They take them under their wing and sort of teach them the lessons of the jungle. They teach them how seasons change. They teach them that if you need to cross a human habitated area, or if you need to pass by, certain areas, how do you pass? How do you avoid humans? Where are your chances of finding food, whether it is crop or whether it is wild fruits, at what time of the year? All this knowledge, it was the big bulls who used to teach the younger ones. In areas of Africa where the big bulls were eliminated due to hunting or whatever, forest management or whatever it was called, they saw that the behavior of the younger bulls was far more aggressive and the amount of conflict was much higher with humans. These young bulls, when they got into must, when their hormones were off balance, they didn't quite know how to behave. They didn't know where to find food. They suddenly found themselves, alone and left to figure all this out on their own. Whereas societies where you had big bulls were much calmer elephant societies. So there was this very, very fascinating study that was done in Africa, and which kind of opened everyone's eyes, and sort of there are many scientists hence who have started looking at bachelor groups and the role of big males in elephant societies in their own habitats. Um, Ramani, have you had any, sort of observations or anything that you all have seen in particular in Sri Lanka?
Yes, yes, we do have the elephants that I call the beggar elephants, which are found on a road that we do pass when we do our Natab trip coming down from the mountains and going to Yala. The road goes in between the park, so we do pass some elephants. And why I call these beggar elephants is that there are pilgrims that also use this road, and they have with them baskets of fruit that they've offered at the temple and which are returned to them. And elephants have smelled that and they have tried to get this fruit, and so become afraid, and they throw out the fruit so that the elephants let them pass. And now it has become a behavior that has been taught to the younger male elephants as well, and you have about 4 to 5, sometimes even 6 male elephants standing by the side of the road and stopping vehicles, preventing them from going until they throw out some fruit. So that, like you said, these young bulls are learning from the older males how to beg. I also have seen on the southeast corner of Sri Lanka in a place called Panama, where there is a herd of elephants led by a tusker that comes every year after the rice has been harvested, and they feed on the rest of the rice, and they spend some time there. And it is the first time that I saw about 5 or 6 of these male elephants just sleeping all together, and I'd never seen that before. Generally, I've seen one, and that also has been very rare. But obviously, this group of elephants are very comfortable, these males, and they have a good sleep of about 1 to 4 hours, and then they leave. So that is really interesting. Again, learned behavior. Here we have these males sparring, and they do this even when they are younger, like our children. When you have boys, brothers, 2 boys in the family, you have them fighting with each other to show which one is stronger. They do exactly the same to establish dominance and rank among themselves. Here, of course, is a friendly greeting. These would have been 2 elephants from the same herd, and they have met after a long time, and when they greet, they just touch each other with their trunks and stroke each other, and it's really beautiful to watch how tender they are to each other.
So this is almost like a hug when you meet an old friend, Ramani?
Exactly, exactly. And here is when you have 2 elephants, of course, they're from different herds, and there is a herd of elephants, female elephants, and there are 2 males, both wanting to have a chance at mating. but the more dominant one is the one who has the preference. And so the other one realizes it and shows that it's submissive by dropping its penis. And sometimes it might urinate a little bit, and you can see the other one sniffing, because that's the way they can sense to see whether the other one is going to be in mass soon, and whether he's going to be a threat to him when it comes to mating with the female.
Fascinating. These males have so much going on amongst themselves, so much communication, so many gestures, so much to do, as in contrast to our popular reputation that it has of being this loner who just lives an absolutely asocial life. So thank you for sharing. These were really very interesting little insights into the life of the male elephant. However, for the audience here, I wonder if you all noticed that in the last few photographs that we saw on the screen of male elephants, while Ramani spoke to us about the male's role and their behavior, that in many of these photographs, including this one, the males don't have tusks, right? Asian elephants, like I said, most males have tusks, whereas females do not. And the males, there are a small percentage of males who, in India especially, who don't have tusks. 90% of males have tusks. And the males who don't have tusks are called makhnas. Okay, I have written it here, makhnas. So elephants in our various local names are called hathi or ane, and there are many other names for it because we have so many languages in India. But the tuskless males, there's actually a name for them, and they are called makhnas. Ramani, isn't it similar for you in Sri Lanka?
Yes, it's similar for us in Sri Lanka, but funnily enough, it doesn't depend on the tusk, but the word they use is atta for an elephant, and atta comes from atta ati, means the one that has an arm, because obviously they have observed and seen how useful the trunk is. So they are called atta, and even the Pali and Sanskrit word hasti means arm. And that's how the elephants are named. Today, the tuskless elephants are called alia, which comes from the word ali, which means large. So alia is the word that they would use for the elephants without tusks, and the ones with tusks, they are called atta.
It's interesting how our local vocabularies have names not just for elephants, but also subcategories in that. Like the tuskless ones have its own term, for in our regions. For those of you in the audience here, how would you recognize an elephant if it was tuskless, and to know if it is a male or a female? So of course, if you see the genitals, it's easy. But if not, you see this very prominent slope on the lower back. That's one. Of course, a large size. You would see the big size of a male when you see it in the field. And also this bump here on the head, between the eyes, this very prominent bump is also something that you see in males and not so much in females. However, speaking of tuskless males, like I said, in India, we have a small percentage of males who don't have tusks. But the story is a little bit different in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, there are only 5 to 7% of males with tusks. Yeah, and Ramani, can you tell us, what do we know about this? How come there is such a skewed ratio of tuskless males?
Well, the belief is that we have been taking out the elephants with tusks. We've been exporting them for many thousands of years. We've also been taking them for fighting in wars. In the past, the kings would go on elephant back to war. They also took the elephants for temples and for religious purposes, for the pageants, because they have what we call the Kandi Perahera, which Sri Lanka is also very well known for, where you have a lot of elephants in the what we call the Perahera. So they believe that these tusked animals have been removed from the gene pool, or they say they have been artificially selected out of the gene pool. And that's why we have such a low number of elephants with tusks.
Very fascinating. The role we have played in this changing the ratio of tusk to tuskless males.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Sorry. Even in Botswana, they have found that the females now are having, less females are having tusks. And even the males, the younger males, also the tusks are not so large. They're more brittle and thin. And maybe that's also a way of evolving to not have tusks because of the extensive poaching.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Ramani. That was absolutely new information. Wow. I wonder where this is going to go. These are changes that are happening in front of us in our lifetimes, no? To see these changes in the morphology of these large animals. Anyway, with that, let's now look at another segment in the elephant society, and the cutest one at that, the calves. They make for some of the most adorable wildlife sightings that one can have. Just to watch these weirdly hairy, giant, tiny babies, like little goofballs playing around with their, trunks and getting zoomies sometimes and running around the field with their tails up. They are just so cute. Of course, they are born after one of the longest gestations in the animal world. The female elephants are pregnant for 22 months before they give birth to a baby. And when they are born, they stick close to the mother. They start recognizing their family, the rest of the herd, at a very young age too, with aunts and cousins taking care of them and playing with them. They also nurse, they feed from the mother for almost 4 to 6 months before they start adding grass and other vegetation to their diet. They're extremely sweet and very, very looked after, very precious member of the herd. And almost up to a year in age, they can fit almost perfectly under the belly of their mother, for perfect protection. You can almost imagine how comfortable and warm this place must be for the little elephant. Ramani, anything from your sightings, anything interesting about calves that you have seen or come across, or your favorite thing?
Yes, here we can see this little baby elephant not having much control over his trunk. Generally, they have to learn to use this lengthy appendage they have, and at the beginning they just flick it back and forth, they swing it, and sometimes they even trample it. And it's only when they reach about 6 to 7 months are they able to start eating, drinking water with it. Until then, they try practicing and copying their mother, and it's only when they are 1 year old that they really know their trunk and control their trunk well. The trunk is really quite an interesting part of the elephant. It is like many human hands working in unison, really. And it is a highly dexterous, and it's really an extension of the upper lip, which has extended into this long nose, or what they call a proboscis. And the trunks are very sensitive. They can really take a stray eyelash from a baby's eye, and at the same time, it is so powerful that they can knock down a brick wall. So they have, from that very sensitive kind of movement to having the power of knocking down the wall is possible. It is also used like a straw. It can siphon up about 20 liters of water. And all this is possible because of the complex structure of the trunk. And it consists of about 60,000 muscles to be able to do this. And the elephants have not a very good eyesight. And but this is compensated by the olfactory sense through the trunk. So the trunk plays a very important role in the elephant's life.
Wow, Ramani, that was an amazing snippet about the trunks. I will never look at the elephant trunk the same way ever again. That was so amazing. 60,000 muscles. Wow. Coming back to the calves though, Ramani, there is something very unfortunate happening right now in Sri Lanka with calves dying.
Yes, unfortunately, with all the protection that the babies get from their mothers and aunts in their society, we find that about 54% of the babies, especially in Yala, die before they reach the age of 2. And this is unfortunate, really unfortunate. And this is because the wildlife park has been fenced with an electric fence. And during drought periods, the elephants here, you can see they've not had enough food, and you can see their skeleton almost showing the lack of food. Either it's because of invasive species growing or them being cut away from the rest of the land. And during drought periods, you'll see that the national park, the next slide, please. Yeah, here we can see that the park really dries up during the drought, but just beyond the fence, you have the forest land, which there is what they call chaina cultivation or slash and burn agriculture that is carried out, which is not very good for the environment, but it's good for the elephants because it allows for grass to grow and keeps the scrub and trees in control.
Yeah, that's really, really sad. It is sad that calves are dying because of a problem like this. It sounds at least as if something that can be reversed if little bit, different departments within the government work together, or, I'm sure a solution can be found to this. It seems like that. Do you feel like that, Ramani?
Yes, of course. And I have some good news. We have just had a presidential directive that the electric fencing that we have, about 6,000 kilometers of it, that it be removed from around the park, and that they fence in the human settlements and their crops and enable the elephants to move around the forest patches without being disturbed. And also, once the crops have been harvested, that they take off the fence, and so that the elephants can feed on whatever that is remaining there as well, which is a very positive step that has been taken.
That's fantastic. That's such great news, Ramani. And it's very, very good news, because especially in this time in our lives, when in our countries, especially India, Sri Lanka, other parts of Southeast Asia, developing countries like we call them, there is so much importance given to facilities and road networks, or industries, agriculture, that the animals are on the receiving end. And of course, along with that, there is also climate change that they are already grappling with. They already have that existing challenge. And our countries, right, India, Sri Lanka, our populations are so high also, and it's a growing population. India, in fact, has just become the #1 populated country in the world. And still, we host large animals like the tigers, the leopards, and elephants, right? On our land, we still share spaces. And Sri Lanka is pretty much the same too. I mean, with a human population in Sri Lanka being at 23 million, that's the last we know. It's probably more today already. Still 5,000 elephants live on that island of Sri Lanka. That is a miracle. And if we have succeeded so far, if in having these animals, that they're still not extinct, they have managed to live in this situation of changing landscapes, growing populations, I think it is now our responsibility to, sort of help them, thrive and survive. And the story that you just told us about the fences is just, it's really music to our ears to hear that. First time ever I have heard that somebody is talking about fencing in human communities, just simply because these large animals need large spaces to be able to move. And even more interesting for me to hear was that these fences are seasonal, and they will be removed once the crop is harvested. And animals are almost like, opening it up to animals to, like, okay, come and eat what's left, because for them even that is nutrition. And hopefully their dung will further fertilize the farms and help the villagers. So all in all, it sounds like really wonderful news. Even in India, we have some some such situations where, for example, here, as you can see in the photograph, we have large spaces of forests which were cleared during colonial times to grow tea and coffee, just like parts of Sri Lanka also. And but elephants, these are ancient routes of the elephants to move from one patch of the forest to the other. So now you see them walking through, tea gardens, and that often becomes a cause of concern. Um, but yeah, they are trying to come up with ways to sort of deal with this as well. Anything that you have heard of, Ramani, about
Yeah,
these kind of
I
situations?
read this article on the Assam tea gardens where they're promoting organic tea, and some tea growers are allowing these elephants to go through the tea, and they have special areas where they grow plants and vegetables for the elephants to feed on, and they don't use pesticides, weedicides, so that the grasses grow, the weeds grow, so the elephants can feed on. And they are being quite successful with it, and are able to get a premium price on the tea also, because uh, selling it, saying that they are protecting the elephants, which they are doing. So it's interesting. I hope we do more of these things in Sri Lanka. We are also planting crops like aloe and citrus crops close to national parks, on the boundaries where would otherwise be growing sugarcane and bananas, which elephants really love to eat. They're replacing it with aloe and citrus, other crops where they can earn an income. So I guess everyone's taking small steps, trying to preserve our populations and them.
Yeah, very, very true. Very, very true. It's amazing that now we have the sensitivity to come up with solutions that are beneficial for both humans as well as the animals, because I don't think there is any other way that we will be able to coexist in the future if not for solutions like these. However, elephants are such clever, such smart creatures that it feels like we'll have to be on our toes, to sort of keep coming with such solutions, because sometimes these elephants find a way around that too. For example, like the electric fence you were talking about, there is a very interesting, a very funny incident from one of the northeastern tea gardens in India, where a farmer had put up electric fences around his plantation, and there was a herd of elephants that used to usually use that area. And one fine day, they saw the electric fence, and they obviously weren't able to cross and go into their path. However, day after day of visiting that area, the elephants learned that there is one time during the day, 5 o'clock in the evening or whatever it was, that for 1 minute the government supply of electricity goes off and the generator kicks in. There was a 1 minute lag between this the change of electric supply. The elephants figured that out. They figured the breakout, and they started coming and standing there right on time, waiting for the electric supply to cut off so that they could cross over, like break the electric fence, cross over and go the usual way. So it's fascinating, it's funny, interesting, and also challenging in some ways, where here we humans and animal lovers, conservationists, are trying to come up with solutions, but we'll always have to know that the elephants might quite easily learn their way around our solutions, and we'll be forced to come up with yet another solution, to coexist. With that, I think I will hand over our last slide to Ramani, to to quote something that she's very lovely lines that she's found.
Yes, I'd like to end by sharing with you a lovely passage that I found, which aptly describes these magnificent animals. They are loving and sensitive. They have a rich emotional and family life. They are non-materialistic and close to nature, and they are endangered, hunted by man and his utilitarian ways of thinking. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ramani. And I guess that's it from us, with this lovely slide in the end, and with the hope that this beautiful creature thrives and survives on our planet. And with that, Sunny, I think Ramani and I are done with the presentation and ready for some questions.
Thank you both so much. That was fascinating. I love the stories that you weave into there. Before we start the Q&A, I just want to remind everyone that they can submit their questions via the questions field in the control panel. There were several questions asking about the life cycle of the elephant. Can you just review for us how long these elephants tend to live, when the males become sexually active or capable of reproduction? I think that those were basically the questions about the life cycle.
Sure. Ramani, would you like to take that question?
Yes, okay. So
one more aspect of that. Around what age do the males leave their herds?
So the males generally leave their herd when they reach adolescence, which is around 12 to 14 years. And they also reach sexual maturity at that time, but they're only able to reproduce when they reach 20, 25 years, and it's kind of suppressed by the older bulls. So they really don't get a chance, although they sneak mating, but generally the females also prefer the older males for mating. There was something else that you asked in that question, and the land, right? They live till, normally in the forest, they live till they're about 60 to 65 years. But if they're domesticated, they will live much longer, sometimes up to 70 to 80 years. And that depends totally on the type of food they eat, because their lifespan depends on their teeth. They have 6 sets of teeth, and when the last set wears out, then they basically starve to death. And that's why you find elephants, when they're old, their graveyards are generally near marshy areas, and that's because that's the last kind of vegetation they can feed on.
Okay. Do the male elephants who grow up without adult males to emulate have different kinds of behaviors? You just mentioned that if there's the older males sort of control their sexual habits. What have you learned about male elephants who don't grow up with adult male elephants?
So in our areas, we still have there's still study is going on. We still don't have clear results published in detail. However, from what we've learned from Africa and some preliminary studies done in our regions, we have seen that younger bulls who do not have a mentor seem to act almost a bit lost. They don't quite know what to do, because now they suddenly find themselves without the support of their herd. They're all on their own. Suddenly they experience their first must, and they tend to be far more aggressive, far more stressed, more wary if they come close to human habitations, because they don't quite know how to react to different reactions and different behavior of even human beings. With this kind of anxious, stressed state of mind, sometimes coupled with the must, these elephants then have a higher chance of becoming what we call problem elephants. It's very, very sad, but we have seen that the situation changes greatly if they are a part of a bachelor herd, or if they are under the wing, or mentored by large mature bulls who are confident, who know their way around. The stress level of the younger elephants are much lower. They get a chance to learn about their habitat step by step. So I hope that answers the question. Ramani, do you want to add something to this?
I think you covered it quite well, but there was one story I read was where the mature males had the mature bulls had been removed, culled in Africa. That the young elephants, the young males went about just killing a rhino. Again, like you get aggressive, and because of their rising hormones, they don't know how to control their behavior, and they take part in this kind of aggressive action.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Fascinating subject. Thank you again for bringing it to us today. That's the last question we have time for, so I will hand it back to you for closing comments.
Well, as usual, thank you, Sunny, for handling the background for us so well, the behind the stage, and thank you everyone who tuned in. It's because of all of you that we keep learning. It gave me and Ramani a chance to get together, work on this, and we've spoken more in the last couple of weeks than we have in the last couple of years. And we've thoroughly enjoyed working on this presentation and presenting it to you. So thank you from me, Ramani.
And thank you everybody for sparing your time and coming to listen to us. We really enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Thank you.
I also want to thank everybody who tuned in. Please join us again tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I'll conclude the webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.